My name is Robert Puentes. I'm a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution's Metropolitan Policy Program. I think there are three things to think about when we talk about what makes an intelligent city. First is that an intelligent city or an intelligent metro area is integrated as opposed to compartmentalized. So many of our systems, our economic areas, our housing networks, our transportation networks, water, energy distribution, labor markets, the list goes on and on. All of these things are metropolitan in scope. They span state or city and local boundaries. And an intelligent city, intelligent metro is one that recognizes that because they're able to plan and prepare for the right scale and scope of these problems. But integration doesn't just mean that across the geographic area. It also means between these disciplines. So I believe that people and businesses fundamentally understand intuitively that issues like housing and transportation and energy and environment, economic growth and development, all of these things are fundamentally connected. It's only in the stovepipe world of government and political bureaucracies where we keep these things separate and we keep them distinct. So an intelligent city really needs to aggressively work to break down these stovepipes. In order to do that, I think, is the second thing, and that's an intelligent city is one that aggressively deploys technology in order to improve the built environment. So things like smart grid, energy distribution to provide low cost, low carbon, economically integrated energy infrastructure, while also preparing for things like the advent of electric vehicles, which are coming down the pipe. Or transportation infrastructure, smart transportation infrastructure to move goods, ideas, and workers quickly and efficiently, seamlessly between these modes. Or smart payment systems, electronic payment systems, so you can use your smartphone to pay for your transit fare, use that same phone to buy your coffee when you leave the station, use the same phone to get through security when you get to your building. All of these things are greatly enhanced by the deployment of advanced technologies that we know how to do. We just need help getting the deployment right. The third thing then is a smart city or an intelligent region is one that uses that information to understand what its economy is. So understands what its economy is looking like now, what are the components that go into it, and then what they need to do to enhance their economy for the future. So this is a different approach for regional economic development, getting away from things like firm relocations and stovepipe chasing, the disproportionate emphasis on Starbucks and Stadia. That kind of economic development model is a thing of the past. We really need these guys to understand what their local economies are, what their regional challenges and opportunities are, where their strengths are, and then prepare and use the technology to deploy better information so they can perform better for the future. Technology is part and parcel of all of that. We love the emphasis on cities. We think this new, we've rediscovered urbanism here in this country, and all that is great, but we've got to understand that these really are metropolitan issues, and as the economy is the front and center issue for our domestic policy discourse, as it is all across the world, we've got to understand the proper scope for these issues. And this comes up with this whole high-speed rail conversation, where it seems like we kind of just draw lines on a map, but just because a metro area is in close proximity to another one doesn't mean that there's an economic connection between those places. So we think LA to San Francisco, for example, clearly they have economic connections. There's lots of passengers moving back and forth between those places. The air travel between those places is very robust and very busy. So that's a place where there is clearly economic connections, but we don't have that in a lot of other areas, or we don't know it is in a lot of other areas. I think one of the biggest challenges to using data and information technology when it comes from a public policy perspective is that all this information is no good if all it's going to enable us to do is to make bad decisions faster, or if it's going to enable us to just justify the decisions we were going to make in the first place. The real potential of all this information, all this data, all this new understanding that we have the potential to have now is that it really enables us to change the way that we make decisions, or to really inform those decisions so that we make sure that we're making the best possible decisions when it comes to an infrastructure investment, when it comes to a regional economic development strategy, when it comes to housing location. All these things should be informed by data and information that we simply didn't have before. That should be part and parcel of how we make decisions in the future. There's a lot of attention on things like benefit cost analyses when it comes to infrastructure investments. But if we measure the wrong things, or if we measure things that we don't intend to measure, we're going to get bad decisions, and it's not going to help us in the long term. So we've got to buttress all this technology and all this new information and all this data with clear public policy goals and perspectives to make sure that we don't concentrate poverty in certain areas. We don't keep decentralizing metropolitan areas. We don't keep wasting some of the precious resources that we have. So it's got to be used in such a way that actually gets us somewhere positive at the end of the day. I think the greatest potential of data and information to change the way our metropolitan areas are shaped, how they're going to grow in the future, is to set us on the course to a new economic framework for this country. I think we understand that the economy that we had that predated the recession was one based on consumption, based on amenities, based on financial calisthenics, and things that just aren't sustainable for the long term. So if we're going to set us on a new path for regional economic growth, for a metropolitan strengthening strategies that are based on exports, that are based on low carbon, that's based on innovation, and that provides broad opportunity to all segments of the society, we've got to have information and technology that helps us get to those goals and objectives. So again, understanding that there are broad connections between metropolitan areas here in the US and globally will help us in one area. To understand what the costs are of carbon emissions, for example. We don't price carbon very well. If we started to put a price on it, understood what that meant, it would open up new markets, it would have big effects on how places are growing and developing. It would stimulate innovation, and if we understood what's happening to more of our at-risk populations, we can craft public policies to help us mitigate some of those challenges better. So it's got to be part and parcel of a larger economic strategy for this country that's rooted in metropolitan areas.